Good morning and welcome to the Prestwick House webinar this week. We're going to take a look at KeyLit, our brand new literature program. My name is Keith Bergstrom and I am the president here at Prestwick House. I've been with the company for about 21 years and I've worked on a really wide range of products. And this is one of the products that I'm most excited to be showing with you. So my goal today is to take about 20 minutes of your time for us to poke through the program, hopefully answer any questions that you have, show you how the program works and what we're trying to do with our brand new literature-oriented digital program. So without further ado, kind of diving into what our goals are and why you decide you might like to work with KeyLit. We've been working on this program for a number of years in a couple of different iterations. And really our goal is to make sure that we can make literature remain accessible to kids as we work into the kind of digital future. We know that literature is the heart and the soul of the English classroom. While there are a lot of different things that you need to cover over the course of the year as an English teacher, literature really exists at the center of that spot. It's the material you do for your reading. It is the topic of writing sources out there. It's the source of the relevant vocabulary that your kids come across. It's examples of good style that your students are writing. And it's the kind of center of the heart and soul of the classroom. So we really think that you can get a lot out of studying literature. And as we've kind of moved on in the last handful of years, trying to address a lot of things digitally, we found that there's not a lot of great resources out there that help support a teacher and give them the data that they need to work with the great books that are available out there. So we've selected a variety of the greatest books in literature, books that you love teaching, the most popularly taught books, and we've developed an online interactive program that really should kind of bring those to a new generation. So what are our goals with this program? We're not just trying to do digital for digital's sake. We wanted to really step back and say, what can technology do really well to help supplement and to fit into your classroom? So again, we wanted to make sure this was interactive and gave you the type of data that you're used to, as well as engaging kids. Some of kids might think that books are static and not as exciting as reading in other environments, but we're bringing that interaction of giving kids feedback and reacting to what students do as they move through the program. We wanted to make sure that it was voiced to talk to kids. It's not just a dry academic material, and that it's designed to be used inside of your classroom. We know that the classroom isn't kind of just a computer lab stuck in the corner, asking students to log in and complete things. So we've built these around being able to fit inside of existing curriculums that help support and work within what you love to do in your classroom. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't just an abstract piece of work that focused on things that didn't matter to you. So it's about building new skills, and it's about tying to the standards that your school and district is expecting you to teach. We wanted to make sure that it provided not only interactivity, but also gave you data. It's an objective assessment of student understanding, not only of the books that they're reading, but also in growing the skills that I mentioned above. And we want to, above all, make sure that the students fall in love with these books and learn the skills that they can take into reading other materials. Because if they don't fall in love with the books and they're just fighting their way through it, then we failed in what we're trying to do. So if you've been following our emails over the last few months, you've been seeing we've been releasing new titles fairly regularly. We have focused on a lot of the classics that are very popular in the classroom: To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men, The Great Gatsby, Frankenstein, Lord of the Flies, and Fahrenheit have all been available for a number of weeks now, and we just added Night this week. We're coming out with brand new titles every couple of weeks, and we're continuing to develop this program out to try to have nonfiction, a couple of kind of more modern titles. We're really focusing on those titles that are the most popularly taught books in classrooms today. So we did the number of surveys to explore what books teachers are using, and we'd like to be able to support the most popular books and the books that really have the depth to dive into them. So in progress, we have three new books that are currently in final editing or layout phases, and that's Raisin in the Sun, Animal Farm, and The Crucible. You should be seeing more updates on them if you signed up for our newsletter in the next few weeks. And we are actively writing Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet. Those are fun. We would take a little bit of a different approach to working in Shakespeare, because of course you need even more scaffolding than you do with a lot of the novels that you do. And you can see some of the other titles that we have in our upcoming list. So we're continuing to develop this program, and it is an ongoing living program that will continue to grow and get better and better over the course of the next number of years. So when we come back and we looked at this program, we knew that one of the things that we needed in order to make this program successful is having a structure that you can fit into your classroom, because you've already got a lot of material to work through. So we wanted to structure this so that it fit into what you're doing. So we built this around, each book includes about 5 to 10 text-based lessons. Each lesson is designed to be used after your students have read the material. You don't need to supplement that with any additional pre-teaching to work on your own. And each lesson takes about 20 minutes of work. So our goal is that once your students have completed a reading assignment, they could go ahead, log into the program, and dive into an analysis of the text. This could be done as homework assignments, could be done in class. Some teachers like to go ahead and read in class, and then when your students have reached the end of the lesson, start to begin working on their KeyLit resources. So really trying to figure out how to fit into your existing structure and support what you're doing. In addition to the text-based lessons that support your reading as you go through here, there's a summative assessment at the end of the lesson. That is an objective understanding of the facts, what happened in the text. That works as kind of a reading check. Make sure you got the basic out of the way, as well as 3 targeted skills that are addressed throughout the unit. So each book focuses on a few different skills, things like characterization, symbolism, the type of topics that you'll look at in examining a book, setting, things along those lines, maybe, and really focuses specifically on things that are very well represented in that specific title. So every book will have a little bit of a different approach. And the summative assessments also make sure that your students have learned the skills to analyze as well as figure out what has happened in the course of that book. And then we wrap up the entire lesson with an unlocking meaning lesson where we focus on the whole book. It's kind of a holistic approach to looking at the big picture items. So we've been developing and reading through the book, looking closely at the symbols, themes, and maybe at the end we'll look at how this is an example of an allegory or how the entire material comes together. So our goal on that is to make sure that you haven't just dive down into so much minutia that you don't understand kind of what the entire program looks like. So in working with the book, you could have as little as 7 lessons or as many as 12 or 13 lessons to work through. So you have a really wide range of activities in here. We decided that this would work very well with fitting into a teacher's existing classroom. We're not able to replace everything that a teacher can do in here. What we want to do is give you tools to help support the materials that you want to do. So if you want to have classroom discussions, if you have a favorite activity, this should help you make sure that your students are coming to those activities with an ability to not only understand what happened in the chapter, but also a little bit more insight into the depth of what is inside of these literature programs. Within each lesson, we have a few different goals to go through here. And we wanted to make sure that we are providing close reading and critical reading practice. What does that mean? We focus almost all of our questions on actually reading the text. You'll find excerpts of the text, short passages, things that your students need to break apart and analyze. We ask questions. Sometimes the questions are purely subjective. Sometimes the questions are related to details in here. And we really try to focus on understanding the material that your students are reading and getting the most out of it. We provide critical thinking practice. These aren't simple recall questions. We're looking at trying to add higher level thinking skills like inference, interpretation, analysis. Again, sometimes we're asking questions that are based on things like, what do you think about this? And sometimes it's about really digging in and trying to figure out what word choice your student, the author used, and how that affects the way that you've read, you're reading the material. So And we also wanted to provide instruction. This isn't just a question and answer material. It's not just a quiz to see if your students went ahead and did their reading. That is an element. We do have some elements of just trying to make sure that you have data, but we also want to make sure that your students leave the program knowing more than what they started with. So after they've answered questions, worked through material, we provide feedback, things like explanations of why the questions and answers were answered in certain ways, as well as defining literary terms, building out the techniques, and connecting all of those to this types of standards that, again, you're expected to produce. So those are kind of the key goals. And so to do that, we provided a structure that is a quick walkthrough here. And I'm going to go ahead and log into the program and show you what a lesson looks like, explain the couple of different sections that we have here. So logging in to my program. This is one of my demo classes. At the end of this demonstration, I'll go ahead and create a login for the attendees and send you a copy of that, as well as a video of this recording so you can see what we're looking at. So when you log in as a student, you'll go ahead and see your class here. This is my trial class that has access to everything, all the books. You'll notice that books are organized by chapter in some cases. So this will be Great Gatsby has 9 chapters. So each of those is the reading assignment. Then we have a summative and unlocking meaning, just like we talked about. Sometimes in larger books, you'll see things like Frankenstein will have a couple chapters grouped together. Those are all kind of divided around what we think is kind of a reasonable reading assignment. And that will depend on the book as you move forward. I'm going to use Great Gatsby as my demo chapter, as Gatsby is always a popular title in here. And we'll click in here and see what Gatsby looks like. So when you've clicked into the assignment, you can start to work through here. And we open up with what we call keys to the lesson. These are our standards-based goals for the day. Just like many schools ask you to write up what you're trying to get done by the end of the lesson. We break that down, address the kids, let them know what we're specifically looking for over the course of the lesson. So they'll know the reason for studying moving forward. The very first thing we do then is address is open up with a very low impact, low stakes warm-up activity. So sometimes it'll do things like tie in an outside quote. Sometimes it'll ask opinion questions. In this case, we've opened up with a quote that you've probably heard before. There are 3 sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth. And what that does is to get your students thinking about what the narrator's role is in a story. So we're not asking people right off the bat to dive into narration. We're asking people about the concept of bias and starting to set the guidelines. So here we have an opinion question. Do you agree with this quotation? Can a completely accurate account of a story be told from only one perspective? Yes, no, I disagree. In this case, it's a low stakes opportunity for your students to share their opinion. And then you see the structure that the program kind of relies on. After your students have worked through a section of questions, we provide feedback. Feedback is a direct answer to the question that they just asked or just answered here. So in The Great Gatsby, Nick Carraway tells the story of his summer in New York with a mysterious and ambitious man named Jay Gatsby. Telling the story from only one point of view can affect accuracy because bias may enter through perceptions of a narrator. So here we've introduced the concept in a very low stakes way of trying to figure out who the narrator is. And that's going to be the goal of this lesson, is starting to understand the point of view and learn a little bit about the characterization of the main characters that your students will come across in Gatsby. So our keep in mind section then gives those skills and works on trying to build and translate that from, we've answered your question. Now let's keep in mind about what we need to pay attention to as we move forward in the book, as we move forward in the lesson. So here we'll have things like definitions of literary terms like first person point of view or an unreliable narrator in this case. So this is the kind of direct instruction that we're using, and we're trying not to just kind of pour information down the students' throats. We're trying to make sure that we're responding to student action. So that's what the online program does. It asks students questions, gives them the opportunity to share what they think about something, and then expands upon that. So that'll be the kind of looping process that you'll see throughout this section. We've moved on from our kind of opening warm up, which you see, like you said, that was a very low stakes thing that it doesn't challenge the student to start to buck against working in programs. It's about saying, hey, we're curious about what you think. And there's really a wide range of different types of warm-up activities as you move forward. Then we move to a more objective question. This is the main events section of each chapter. Make sure that we have data as teachers to go back and say, hey, I know which students have gone ahead and understood the reading. If your students aren't able to answer these kind of basic plot level questions, sometimes they'll be true and false questions. In an example like this will be an ordering question, so you can kind of try to figure out what happened in the chapter. Again, this should be done very shortly after a student has completed the assignment. They can just click and drag these assignments, these activities into the correct location and try to see how the events unfolded in the chapter in this case. Our goal with this is to not only give you that information about which students are coming into the lesson with a basic understanding of what happened, but also to kind of scaffold the lesson. So if a student does miss this, didn't do their reading last night, we don't want them staring at a computer screen, unable to move forward. We do assume that students have read here, but this gives them at least a little bit of an organization. So they go through here, they see some of the events that have happened, and then they're able to move forward. And in the feedback section of our main events portion, we summarize what happened in the chapter. So your students have that kind of basic understanding of what's going on over the course of the book, which means they can move forward and start to do some of that textual analysis without it feeling completely disconnected from what happened. So you'll see again, it follows with feedback and keep in mind. So it focuses on kind of what are the things that we need to pay attention to over the course of this chapter. Then we move into kind of the main body of the lesson. The main body of the lesson focuses on a variety of different subject topics. For example, in this case, we're focusing a lot on characterization and learning to know a little bit about Nick Carraway. I'm not going to read everything as we move forward through here, but I thought it is kind of interesting for us to just take a look at the first couple of questions to see how we go about addressing these text-based questions. So apologize if I'm just reading what is on the screen here, but we'll kind of get a little bit of a analysis and understanding of what we're going for as we read the passages in here. So Nick opens the story by telling us about some advice that his father gave him. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. The advice formed how Nick treats people. I'm inclined to reserve all judgment, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. Reserving judgment is a matter of infinite hope. I am still afraid of missing something if I forget that. A sense of fundamental decency is parceled out unequally at birth. So right off the bat, we ask for, based on these quotations, which is again about focusing us on some of the most important passages within this book. If you're familiar with Great Gatsby, you know this is kind of one of the key opening elements of the book, is trying to understand who Nick is. So we ask a question about where he believes these accounts of the events will be. Well, we feel like he himself thinks that he's very accurate and objective. Again, from our intro, we kind of are curious about that. So when I move forward throughout this, we're exploring a couple of times a little bit about Nick Carraway. So now we have a series of true-false questions. You'll see we had tried to address a really wide range of different question types moving forward here. With objective answers, true, false, you get a chance to click through here and explore, again, from the point of view of a variety of different quotes, what the character of Nick Carraway is about. So now we have a quote about his time with Gatsby. And again, yes, no questions, being able to explore what words from this quote might give you a negative impression of Nick's time with Gatsby. So here we're starting to get into language analysis by going through here and finding the negative words. You start to prompt your students to pay attention to word choice. And then at the end of each section, we feedback, we answer the questions, we come back and we explain what we were going for with these. So as Nick recalls his time in New York, he gives the impression that it was a disturbing experience that changed his view of the world. He claims to be non-judgmental of others, but his desire to live where people are moral and decent makes it seem like he tried, but might not have succeeded in reserving judgment. This comment indicates that Gatsby will fall prey to the foul dust that may ruin his dreams. Will he be able to overcome the obstacles in the way of his dreams? And then the keep in mind focuses on what are the things that you can bring forward. So into the rest of your reading. So Nick's perception of what happened provides a preview of the events to come, which involve people's dreams and the moral decay of society. As you read, pay attention to how Nick interprets events and views other people. Notices how ideas about personal dreams and morality appear repeatedly throughout the story and develop into larger concepts. So we're starting to introduce the themes that you'll be looking at over the course of the whole book to help, again, encourage your students to really understand that the book's more than just a mere collection of events that happened to some characters in the distant past. So there will be a variety of different sections as you move through here. I'm going to click pretty quickly through the rest of the activities. Again, when I create the logins for you and send those out to you today or tomorrow, you'll get a chance to go ahead and see a little bit more detail about what is going on with these lessons. If you're viewing this as an on-demand webinar and you want to get a lesson, I do have some instructions for how to request a trial here at the end, or you could always just visit our website. So our second section focuses on a little bit of the setting, the difference between West and East Egg, which we know is a major part of the introductions. And then we're introduced to some of the other characters that you see in chapter 1, the Buchanans. Again, we have some questions where you can drag and drop, trying to make sure we're using a variety of different question types moving forward with both Daisy and with Tom. Thank you, couldn't remember his name. So we get to meet a little bit about these people, get a little bit of feedback moving forward, and then we look into the events of the dinner party. So we're summarizing what happened over the course of the lesson, but we're doing it through analysis of quotes. And again, you'll be able to click through and see all this material yourself with your trial account. So at the end of the lesson, once you've gone ahead and seen the variety of different activities, worked through this, you'll come to our final section, which is the key takeaways. These are kind of bring you back to the beginning and remind you that of the things that you've learned over the course of the lesson. They are basically answers to the opening section that you were trying to look at and the goals that you worked on. So we've come to take a look at the characters as Nick comes to East Egg to have dinner with his cousin Daisy, Tom, and Jordan Baker. Nick finds himself in the middle of Tom and Daisy's marital drama, and a mysterious man stands on the lawn outside his house looking at the green light on Daisy's dock. We're introduced to literary devices such as diction, mood, and metaphor, and we've worked on the developing ideas to pay attention over the course of the next few reading assignments, such as the effects of significant interactions between the characters. Look for the colors. We've been introduced to the concept of the green light and the white throughout the text, and we are examining sections that develop Nick's impression of society in the 20s and what larger ideas. So over the course of this lesson, we've gone ahead and explored a variety of different kind of core techniques. We've discussed characterization, and your students are able to bring those materials, and hopefully it will help build awareness and interest of what makes this book great moving forward. Once they submit the assignment, students can get answers and get feedback to specifically how they did on each question. Obviously, some questions have our opinion questions. Those aren't graded in there, but materials like that, once they're submitted, will show up in your grade book. So you'll be able to see which students are getting the most out of the program, which students might need intervention. With an online program like this, it's a great opportunity for you to kind of peek and come back and try to, while other students are working, you can go talk and address the specific problems that your students might be having. And again, I'll just take a look at the other section I wanted to just point out really quickly is our summative assessment. Every book has a final objective assessment on here. All of these are multiple choice questions, things like true and false, multiple choice, and quick. There's 10 questions focused on reading comprehension, understanding what happened over the course of the book, gives you that objective analysis. And then after we move through those 10 questions, we focus on 3 core literary goals in the book. So we've addressed something like symbolism. So our question is about what does the green light across the base symbolize, which we've explored over the course of the entire book. We're looking at a variety of different symbols in here. Then we're looking at characterization. So we dig into what do we know about the various characters? What have we learned? How have they been developed? You'll see sometimes these questions will rely on quotes. Sometimes they'll rely on some of the knowledge that we've learned throughout the course of the book. And finally, we're looking at themes. So we're able to take a look and understand a little bit more about the materials and some core elements. So you'll find these will vary based on the book. Often we'll follow large scale things like characterization, theme, symbolism, diction. That will vary depending on the book moving forward. So that's my quick overview of the way the program works. You'll notice we have all of these different books available right now, and they're all divided up in a little bit different sections here. But they do follow that same structure. So your students, when they log in, they'll understand, and whether they're working on Of Mice and Men, To Kill a Mockingbird, Lord of the Flies, whatever these books are, they'll be able to come into the program knowing what they need to do on any given day. They'll be able to follow the structure that has been laid out for them, and be able to move forward through the lessons and hopefully get more out of the books that they're reading. Kind of last question I normally get at this point is kind of how is this organized for the classroom? How do we go ahead and create these materials? And we do set these up as a license for schools. So for smaller, you can see the pricing on here. It's all available online from our website. But the idea is when you go ahead and decide to move forward with the program, we're able to license it for every student. You have access to every program. Even as we add new titles, they'll be added to your library, and you can go ahead and start to teach new books if you come across these. So like I said, we're always adding new material at any point in time. It is designed for school use, so we do have some minimums of 50 students set up in here, but we try to make sure that we import all students, and you don't have to do a whole lot of extra work. Once it's set up in the front place, you get to log in as a teacher, and you can mostly monitor your students' behavior. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via the chat after this webinar is over, or go ahead and email me at keith@prestwickhouse.com. As I mentioned, I'll be going ahead and sending out a copy of this demonstration via video after we're done. And I hope I've been able to answer many of your questions and give you a little more insight to what our goals are for KeyLit. So thank you so much for your time this morning, and I hope to hear from you soon.